Are we live? Welcome, everyone, to How to Buy a House You Love in the City. I'll put my microphone here so maybe you can hear Jordan a little bit. Yeah. I'll tell you where to put it. I'll tell you where to put it, Jordan. So, yeah, welcome to the first. Well, we've done some live events in the fall, but this is kind of the first sort of maskless post. Are we saying post-COVID? Okay. Maybe we're not post-COVID.
That's right.
So, yeah, I guess, there's a lot of stuff happening in the press these days about affordability, those kind of things. And, we were talking, there's a bunch of things we've been doing for 10 plus years that, are in the news now, like co-ownership and, getting an income to have a property. So we thought, hey, let's just put on an event where we talk about what are the options to get into a house in the city.
That you love.
That you love, exactly.
Yeah, so much of the conversation recently has been about things like ownership, been in the paper everywhere.
Yeah.
How expensive it is to have a home in the city, and we've been taking people from basically condos into houses with different strategies for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And maybe people are catching up to us. But, we
I
decided
think
we should start talking about this.
I think they are, Jordan.
It's in the paper all the time.
We're innovators. That's what I like to say.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. And before we start, let's kind of pull the crowd. Ben, maybe you can help us with who's online. But are there any burning questions you guys had about buying houses in the city?
What is the average price of a home in the city, and what should your income be?
So we're going to talk about that, I guess, in a roundabout way. Oh, repeat the question. Darren's asking how much you need to make and down payment for affordability. We're going to talk a little bit about some options. We're not mortgage agents. There are some in the crowd, I understand. But maybe we'll get them to answer that after. And any other burning questions you guys had about affordability in the city?
Probably
No?
more after.
More after? Do you guys own do you own a house right now? No. No? Family. And do you want to get into a house at some point?
I'm trying to get my family into flipping. That's what I'm trying
I hear you. And do you want to live in a house one day, or are you?
Not necessarily right now. Preferably some land
Okay.
at some point.
Some land. All right. I like what I'm hearing. Ben, any feedback on the line? Okay. Let us know. Here, I'll just stand close to you, Jordan Newman. Or I can plug you in. Here, I'll plug you in.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
What's the benefits of owning a home? Well, okay.
There you go.
Really what we're talking about today, one of the main things we're talking about is how do we get more space? So I know when you want to own a house, well, really, for a lot of people, it's about more space. And this particularly came about in the pandemic. People were in tiny apartments. A lot of people were in condos, and so many people were talking about, how do I get another room? How do I go from a one-bedroom to a two-bedroom? We were working from home. How do I get out of this? How do we share a couple both working from their condo or what have you? So one of the things we want to talk about here is, how do we get more space? How do we get more space for the dog? Over the last couple of years, couples go from a condo and they get a dog. How do we get a house? Yeah. So at the end of the day, what we're going to show you today is, believe it or not, having a house in a lot of ways is a lot cheaper than buying a condo, as a matter of fact.
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise. And we're going to get to that. We've actually got some live examples. One of the reasons you can get a house is for income to offset costs. Paul loves to talk about living for free. He's done that himself. How do you have your own home and have rental income such that you can actually live for free? Paul is one of those people that's actually done that, so he loves talking about living for free. Another benefit of having a home versus a condo is they appreciate faster. So we'll talk about the graphs on this, but condos not only have houses appreciate faster historically, but the fact of the matter is we're kind of tapped out on the number of houses that we can build.
We're not building
And
anymore.
we're not really building any more houses in the city, or it's a very, very, very small amount. And in terms of the opportunity for appreciation is going to be in homes. Okay, it's just in terms of supply and demand.
Yeah.
Also, when we're talking about homes, if you've got a lot, you can build on it, you can develop it, you can underpin your basement. There's so many different things that you can do. And of course, bottom line is, you can also just make it your home. You can change it and you can fit it for exactly what you need for you and or your family.
Nice. That was really awkward standing next to you. I'm not gonna do that again. Yeah, and so I guess kind of what we wanted to talk about today was, you know, like the biggest question people have, and it was kind of your question, Darren, was how do you really afford to buy a house, right? And we've helped people do it in so many different ways, and you know that's part of what we want to share today. You know, part of it is, you know, maybe you sell something, maybe there's, you know, other income coming in, maybe you do some renos, maybe you buy a property that has income potential, so that allows you to afford it, and co-ownership. That's kind of coming up in the news, and that's something, you know, we've been doing 10 plus years. We've been doing co-ownership, you know, and we put people together, and we'll tell you stories about that as well. And actually, these were a couple that we helped get a house in the neighborhood, sold a condo in Liberty Village, moved into ROTC. They were able to get a house, and so we were featured in good old Toronto life. And you know what? We're famous. Except I think we're just called. There we go.
Okay.
Ben, are we live?
All right, so we wanted to actually look at some live examples of the difference between buying a condo, and there's nothing the matter with buying a condo, but as we said, for most people, if you had a choice and you're looking for more space, a lot of people would prefer to move up to a home. I think that's fair to say. But the interesting thing is, when you start to look at the actual price of condos, and again, this is we're going to look at a condo, actually a duplex. This is not really a duplex. It's a home with a basement unit, right? Yeah. It's a home with a basement unit. Yeah. Exactly, a secondary suite, and we're going to look at a triplex. So these are strategies we're talking about, how we can maybe get you from thinking about a condo, or if you have a condo, moving up easily to a home. Because we hear this time and time again, I've got a condo, how do I get enough money to be able to afford a home? Typically the scenario is somebody has a condo, their boyfriend or girlfriend moves in with them, they get a dog, all of a sudden, 2 years later, the condo's too small. We're talking about maybe changes in our life, and how do we get a home? So the interesting thing is, when you start to do the numbers, that, believe it or not, a condo, a 700 square foot condo, can actually be more expensive than having a home with some income in it. So we're just going to go through that. And as I said, this is a condo that we just bought not too long ago in Liberty Village, so these are live numbers. The condo was bought for about $750,000, therefore that's the down payment. Obviously we did no renovation in a condo. The total cash required, $175,000, a mortgage payment. This is your maintenance fees here, to a total monthly cost of $3,165. So that's your typical two-bed Liberty Village condo that would be very standard, nice condo, nice place to start out, what have you. Now, the interesting thing is, this is an actual property that was bought in Dufferin? Corso Italia in this case. Yeah, we changed it. This one was just bought in Corso Italia about a month ago? Yeah, they're closing next week. So this is a great little house, about 1,400 square feet with a basement unit in it. So believe it or not, we were able to get this property for just over $1 million. So it was a great deal, I'll be honest with you. You don't run across great deals like that all the time, but it was a great deal. We really do focus on them. But anyway, your down payment, of course, is a little bit more because you're paying more money for the property up front. So you need a little bit more cash up front. Your mortgage payment is therefore a little bit higher. But notice that your monthly expenses are lower, because in maintenance fees on a condo, you're paying for a lot of other things. You're basically paying for things that other people are using. So your total monthly costs are similar, a little bit higher here, until you add in that basement unit. And then when you add in that basement unit, all of a sudden, you're paying almost exactly $1,000 less in monthly payments. And this is a hard one for a lot of people to get their head around. You can actually pay a lot less money per month. And that's what it's all about. Does it really matter what kind of car you drive if your monthly payments are, if it's $500 for one car and $500 for another car, does it really matter? I mean, obviously it depends on how, you're going to string it over 4 years or 5 years. But the point is, in terms of your monthly payment, and this is actually what I've actually done. A lot of my friends didn't understand how I could afford a house way back then when I did it. I put somebody in the basement. I actually still have somebody in the basement. And this is how and I've had a very low mortgage cost over the last 10 years because of that. The numbers get even better when we start to look at a triplex. Now, keep in mind, if you were to buy this property, you would go from living in 700 square feet to 1,400 square feet with somebody in the basement, or I should say, our client did, in this particular case.
And a backyard, right?
And a backyard for the dog and parking, all those things, and a parking spot and all those great things. Now let's take a look at it with a triplex. Now in a triplex, of course, you're going to live in one unit potentially, assuming that you're going to live in the property. This is how a number of people have really accelerated their wealth, particularly if you're younger and starting off early. It's a great way to accelerate. It's a great way to accelerate your wealth, period. But
And that's actually a property in Blordale Village.
yeah, Blurdale Village. Terrific up and coming area. So this is a triplex that we helped our client buy a couple months ago.
It was the fall. Yeah.
Oh, it was the fall. Yeah, that's right. Jordan. That's right, because we did the reno. Right, because the reno's just finishing. In this particular case, Jordan, the owner, is going to be living in about 750, 800 square feet. Similar as what the condo would be. He's got a great 2-bedroom place. He bought for 1.2. So again, it's more money down. Now in this case, he's actually adding some renovation to it as well, because he's taking this property and he's triplexing it and he's making it exactly to fit his need. He's going to have a beautiful 2-bedroom place for himself. Then he's got the main, and then he's got the basement. Well, out of that, so here's his mortgage here. He's going to have, obviously as a triplex, he's going to have higher expenses. It's a more expensive property. So his monthly costs to begin with are going to be substantially higher. However, when you add in the rental income, look at that, his monthly payments. He's essentially, as Paul likes to say, living for free.
That's pretty cheap.
So it's, so for somebody who is pretty savvy, and Jordan's a very savvy guy, he's often at these seminars. We like to think that's why he is savvy. But as you can see, he's living for about $500 a month in a property that he bought for 1.2, put in $80,000. So he's got about 1.3 now into it, invested in this property, in a great up-and-coming location, and essentially living for free. Now, the final thing that we want to get at is market appreciation. And this is based upon the last 5 years. So that's our asterisk here. But basically, if you bought this, if this was bought 5 years ago, this is the bump that that particular person would have gotten as $230,000. In a duplex, again, because it's a house now, and also because it's worth a little bit more money, look at how your appreciation jumps, almost $100,000, okay? And again, your monthly costs are lower, but your appreciation is higher. But look what happens here now on this triplex. Again, because they've gone bigger, and look at the difference in this market appreciation. And this is at 5.5%, I think?
5.5%.
A year.
Over 5 years.
Over 5 years, right. So that's, considering the past, that's pretty darn, that's very conservative. We're not saying that it's going to be 5.5 forever for the next 5 years, but we are saying 5.5 looking backwards is a very conservative number. Look at that, almost $500,000. So you would have done really well here, you know, but you would have made exactly twice as much here, and essentially living for free. So that's a pretty nice story to tell if you are looking to have a house and investment.
Any questions on the numbers? Any questions on the numbers?
Sorry.
Let's just swap the microphone.
Oh, okay, sure.
Just get a regular mic. Any questions on the numbers? You both are numbers people. Darren, you're a numbers person.
Yeah, looks good. The numbers look good.
The numbers look great.
Sorry,
They look great. They don't look good.
Amazing.
They look great. So, you know, I think another one of the big questions we get is, you know, when people are thinking about getting into the real estate is, you know, is there going to be a market correction, right? Like, what's going to happen? And certainly in the last month, we've seen a slowdown. We know the Bank of Canada announced today, actually, that they're raising the posted rate 0.5%. So we are seeing, you know, a slowdown. I would say it's not a correction. But you kind of, like when you're buying real estate, you really have to think long term, right? Like what's going to happen. So, you know, as an investor, I look at different cities in North America, around the world. And the things you look for are, is population growing? Is employment growing? And is housing keeping up with that stuff, right? And in this case, I threw in wage growth, right? Because if you see the first two, but wages are stagnant, that's also kind of a red flag. But in this case, in Toronto, we're seeing populations growing, we're seeing employment growing, we're seeing wages growing, actually faster than employment because we're moving to a higher tech sector, right? And actually, that was my calculation. The housing growth at 2.3. StatsCan just came out with 1.8%. So the truth is we're not keeping up in Toronto in terms of supply, particularly of houses. And, you know, interestingly, I think, jump in.
Yes, I wanted to ask about your thoughts on the government or the federal government putting a block or whatever it is that they're doing in terms of a pause on foreign investment in our real estate market.
That's a great question. So the question was, just a quick comment on the ban on foreign buying, which isn't actually implemented yet. It's still in the talking phase, I believe. Policy tends to be a lot of talking and not a lot of action, but so just to kind of a brief history. You know, first Vancouver implemented a foreign buyers tax, and then Toronto, the GTA, implemented a foreign buyers tax. So what you saw is investors moved from Vancouver to Toronto, and then now actually they moved to Montreal. That's why, I mean, I don't know if you follow that, but the real estate in Montreal over the past few years has jumped, right? For that reason, mainly. So truthfully, you know, I saw a study that foreign buyers were less than 5% in Toronto real estate before they implemented the foreign buyers tax. So I think it's probably not going to be a huge impact. There'll be a little bit for sure, but I don't think it's going to be a huge impact. What do you think? Does that answer your question? Come on in. You know, and the other thing I wanted to say is I think a lot of people, you know, you want to buy low, sell high, right? That's what everybody wants to do. But the truth is, like right now is a great time to buy, and people are like pausing, right? So the actions people take is they actually buy high, sell low, even though they want to do the opposite. So, you know, part of what we're saying today is, you know, the long-term, medium to long-term projections for Toronto are amazing. If now is a great time to buy, then get out there and buy. I know, you know, that's our little plug for Toronto real estate. Whoops. Yeah, I just want to mention, and actually this doesn't include, this was August, over the last 10 years to August 2021. It actually jumped even further in the last 6 months, but the compound annual growth rate, so that's really growth on growth in the GTO over the last 10 years has been 9.7%. So when we're talking, 5.5% growth rates, that's very reasonable. And truth is, supply-wise, today we're sort of talking about, why would you want to think about a house? And all the supply we're adding is in the condo market. We're not making any more houses, right? The supply of houses is basically flat, right? And condos are getting more expensive, right? So the price per square foot on new launches now is pretty close to $1,300 a square foot, and that's a lot. And how they're keeping prices down is making condos smaller and smaller and smaller. So, yeah, any questions about the market? It's a quiet crowd. Was I doing this one? Yeah. Okay. It's got Does it look familiar? Same jacket, maybe even. So yeah, if you guys are familiar with our YouTube, and actually the houses we were talking about before, there's videos on those houses as well. So if you want to check that out, please do. So this was a video we did on should you sell your condo, and just quickly, without kind of getting bored through the details. The problem with condos, Jordans were saying on that chart, is the condo fees, and it really makes the cap rate. So the cap rate is a measurement of how much income you generate for dollar value of a property, right? So the cap rate on condos is really low because the costs are so high, the monthly expenses are so high. So, usually what we find is it's better to take the equity you have tied up in a condo and put it towards a house, because you can get more income, you can get maybe a better house, and you can probably get a property with more potential, right, for future development. Now, all that is personal choice. Some people want to keep their condo as a rental, and that's fine too. We just want to give you all the information to help you make the right decision. And please watch that video, because and actually, Darren, that got like 30,000 views or something. So, just saying,
You're a star.
Is this you or me? Okay. It's me because I like renovating, so that's why Jordan. Yeah, so one of the things, people are always saying, well, why would you want to renovate, right? I mean, but there are challenges to renovating, right? You got to fund the renovation. You need a place to live potentially in the interim. It does take time, and it sucks up a lot of energy because you got to make some choices sometimes. And in the numbers Jordan was presenting about Jordan, a different Jordan, it was a lot of effort for him, right? He did a lot of the work himself, and so there are challenges to renovating, but really renovating allows you, firstly, really to build what you want, exactly what you want, and typically you can get more property for less, because the properties that are, we'll call them builder ready or renovation ready, aren't necessarily marketed and priced the best, right? It's not the sexy home that a lot of people will do the big bidding wars for. And, renovations actually allow you to create equity, which, we'll talk about here, actually. So here's an actual example. This is also a video on our YouTube channel, if you guys want to check that out. This was in Brockton Village, right? That's what it's called. And so this is a property we got for some clients where we bought it. It didn't look great. Honestly, it was a rooming house, and he did some weird renovations in the basement. We got an amazing deal at the time. Now it seems like an incredible deal. We did a light renovation, 70,000. We took out some walls. You can see the kitchen is like amazing now. We fixed up the basement, so it has a really great layout. And they actually rented that basement and lived upstairs. And it only took 3 months. So with a quick reno, they actually at the time increased their value by $100,000. Now that property is actually worth probably about 1.5, Hey, would you say, in that neighborhood? So that's just an example of something that's, not hard to do, and, you can see you can add value right away, right? That's a great question, because that's probably one of the challenges too, is finding the right people, mortgage brokers, contractors, lawyers, all that kind of stuff. And this is one of our contacts that we had. She's a great contractor, and she's also a designer, so she really helped make the space look amazing. We have contractors, we have architects, we have all the professionals to help. If that makes sense. Any questions? It's a quiet crowd. It's a quiet crowd in here tonight. Online, please jump in with questions. Ben will tell me when there's a question. Is this you? Oh, yeah, I asked you. Oh, okay. Sorry.
It's all right. This is just a little diagram showing you what we are generally looking for. So it's a nice little schematic of, here are some of the key things that, in a perfect case scenario, you'd have all 7 of these in a property, but it's some of the things that we are looking for that tends to find you a great property. So first of all, like we were talking about Jordan's property, close to transit. He was a block away from the TTC on Bloor. ARV is after reno value. So there's so many things that might go into what we call after reno value, but basically we're looking for a property with potential that for every dollar that you put in, you're going to get 1, 2, or 3, and obviously we want to get 5, 10, whatever we can to maximize our after reno value. Right now, for example, you might, and we're going to get to it in a second, but it's one of the things you might look at is the lot size. It might be the unique area that it's in. It might be its location across the street from a park and things like that. But generally, it's what is it going to be worth after you put in some renovation into it. So we saw that in the last slide. Our client put in exactly $70,000, and overnight they had made a little bit over $100,000 on that. So that was a great project. And we would call that last one a diamond in the rough. It was a rooming house. It showed absolutely terribly when we looked at the property. And fortunately, we had a client, and this takes some creativity, and sometimes it takes some guts, but we had a client that could see past the dirt. We could see past the way the tenants, particularly, quite frankly, it's often with a house that has renters in it, and you're going in it and you're seeing it, it hasn't been staged in any way. Let's just put it that way. The next one we talk about all the time, if you've been to any of our seminars in the past, or if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll hear us talking about laneways and garden suites. On any purchase now, we're always looking for the opportunity of downstream opportunities to develop the property, whether it's for cash flow and you're an investor, or you're just someone who wants to potentially have some more space. I can tell you in my case, for example, I'm looking at putting in a laneway suite for my father, who's retired and wants to. We'd love to have him closer to the kids. We just don't want to have him in my house. So it's kind of a win-win potentially that way. Another thing that we're always looking for is basement access and the height of the basement. Because if we can get anything that's over 6 feet tall, that's an opportunity for income. And if it isn't income today, it might be income tomorrow, or vice versa. So in my case, what I have is I have someone in the basement, and in the future, as my kids get older, they're 8 and 10 now, and very soon, as they continue to smash my living room and bedroom and TVs and all these great things, playing games, they're going to be going down to the basement very soon. So I can reclaim that, but I've had somebody down there for the last 10 years helping me pay the mortgage. So we're always looking for basement access. The more height, the better. Right now, if you can get up to 8 feet, but typically we're looking at something more like 6.5 feet is great.
I think legal is 7.
It's 7.5, 7. Yeah, it's close to 8 anyway. Obviously, lot size is becoming more, particularly if you're going to develop a property, it's becoming more and more important in what we're looking at because there's so many more opportunities now to develop properties that lot size, I would say, is becoming even more important than it has been in the past. So we really focus on it more. Yeah, because if you want to do anything with your property in the future, you might buy a tiny little bungalow. I've got friends that I've encouraged to buy a tiny little bungalow out in Etobicoke because all around them you can see they've gone from 800 square feet to 3,500 square feet right beside them. So it's not just the house, it's the potential that the lot gives you. So we're looking at lot size more and more. And flexibility is the last one. I find this is a big one with my clients. Particularly, it's really important for people who are doing that condo, trying to get to a house, maybe doing a triplex, then a duplex, or for investors. Again, I'll go to my example. When I bought my house, I bought it a number of years ago just as an investment property. I was actually renovating it to turn it into a triplex, and I liked my neighbors so much I decided to move in. Well, initially I was going to triplex it and move into the top, about 750 square feet, have a main level unit and a basement unit. Just so happened to be dating a woman at the time who ended up being my wife, and I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to use the main and the main and the second level. So all of a sudden, I moved into my 1,600 square foot house, but I had somebody in the basement. So I've had that property now for over 10 years. But as I said, I've still got a renter in the basement. And as my family has grown, now I'm going to take over that basement. So it started out as a triplex, became a duplex or somebody in the basement, and now I will eventually take over that whole property. And so that's a terrific opportunity, particularly for, say, a young couple who has got a one-bedroom condo now or a 1+1. How do I afford to buy a house? Sell the condo. Let's put you into something that's got some revenue, whether it's in the basement or a duplex or a triplex, and you can take over those units as time requires and as your needs change. Yeah. So it's a great way of doing it. And as we said, the numbers are less expensive. That's the interesting thing. You'll find that you're probably paying less money than you are for your condo right now. So, what's the next one, Mike? Oh, no, this is you.
That was me. Sorry, I took your slide. You can take my slide.
Before we move on,
Yeah.
we just have a comment, Burberry on YouTube.
Is it a good comment?
It's kind of funny.
Okay.
They say, I'm in a terrible condo and there is no locker. I'm not sure how I arrived at accepting this place.
I'm sorry to hear that. I don't know if that's a rental or, you know, I guess I have two comments on that, Ben. The first comment is, you know, yeah, lockers actually have the highest ROI of anything. So like you can rent a parking space for say $150, but they cost like 50, sometimes 100 grand now, right? In a condo. So a locker's like $3,500 and you can rent it for 50 to 100 bucks. So that has the highest ROI of anything I've ever seen. So always buy a locker, buy two if you can. And the second thing is, you know, when we help clients buy condos, you know, we're looking for condos that are resellable, right? So we're looking for ones that have good layouts, that have good access to views, and will be, you know, easily sold on the marketplace. So, sorry to hear about your locker. But if you want more space, talk to us. We can help. Yeah, and so, you know, really what stops people from getting a house, right? So, you know, typically, you know, all the people we've helped, it's, you know, you can't come up with a down payment. You can't qualify for the mortgage. You know, a lot of people don't want to deal with tenants. I understand that. I get it. And, you know, when we're talking about renovations, they can be stressful, right? So those are a lot of things that stop people from actually getting into a house where it's probably the right thing in terms of space and for lots of reasons. And I want to talk about an example because I actually recently helped a friend. They're actually closing on the property tomorrow. They came to me and they had all 4 of these problems, right? Their landlord was selling their house. They wanted to buy it. They wanted to stay there. And they wanted to do a light reno and rent out the lower unit. And then they wanted to stay and keep renting out their unit and need some work, like fix the roofs and stuff like that. So they came to me because they didn't have the full down payment. They weren't going to qualify for the mortgage. They were, it's not that they didn't want to deal with tenants, they just were inexperienced dealing with tenants. And they've never done anything close to a renovation. So what I did is I connected them with one of our investors that we have in our database. And so that person helped them with the down payment, helped them qualify for the mortgage. He was experienced already with tenants, had lots of other rental properties, so was able to help them deal with tenants and do that, and had also done lots of renovations. So it was kind of like a perfect marriage of, you know, getting a great property and bringing on an investor, and you know, that's exactly co-ownership. And it's, you know, it's like Jordan said, it's something we've been doing for 10 years plus. And you know, I guess now it's gaining mainstream media, but it's a great way to get into owning a home. Anything you want to say about that?
It's sexy now.
It's sexy now. It's new? Co-ownership? So yeah, so we'll talk about that. So, and we'll explain what is co-ownership. Almost there.
Hi, Paul.
Yeah,
I do have one question though.
I love questions.
In terms of the strategy that you use with the investor,
Yeah.
how do you guys go about that?
In terms of what?
Like, was it some sort of like rent to own scenario where maybe like they purchased it on their behalf and then like, hey, pay me back, or like was it like is some sort of something adjacent to seller financing?
So let's just jump to what is co-ownership, because we asked the question. So basically, and I'll sort of explain it generally, and then we'll talk about this specific case. So generally, co-ownership is where you're buying a property with another party. Sometimes it's your family, sometimes it's a friend, sometimes it's an investor. It could be any of those things, and we've done all those things, right? It could be other, like, so sometimes what we do is we'll put two or three groups of people in the same house. They're all going to live there, so they want to buy a property that they can all live in together. And basically, you're sharing the benefits of the costs of home ownership. And to answer your question, in general terms, there's no set formula, right? So typically, the type of tenancy you get into is a percentage-based tenancy, right? It's called tenants in common, right, Ben? Test. It's a good test. So what that means is, if something were to happen to you, let's say you're one of the co-owners, it actually goes through your estate, that property, versus like when you're buying with a spouse, it's typically joint tenancy. So if something happens to your spouse, the property reverts to your name. So in tenants in common, you can be any percentage ownership. It could be 10, it could be 15, it could be 30. So like we did one where with another owners, investors, and the owner was 33% and the investors were 66%. The property I was talking about was 50-50, so the people that live there were 50% and the new investor was 50%. Yeah. Now typically, since you're in the mortgage profession, I think what happens is the banks don't care about the percentage. Everyone has to qualify to be able to make that mortgage payment.
You're right, because
Yeah.
by adding the joint tenancy right there, just by having that person there, it might offset the debt service,
Yeah,
making it entirely more affordable for everybody.
totally. So it could be 99 and 1, which sometimes you'll see like when parents sign on title, there'll be like 1%, but all their income helps the person qualify for the mortgage. Did that answer your question?
So it's a little bit of a subsector of, let's say, private lending, so.
No, I'd say it's more on the equity structure, right? And like truthfully, like when I bought my first rental properties, I own it with another guy. We're just a friend. We just decided to start. So we did this before we even knew that it was called what it was called. And, you know, really kind of the most important thing is you have what's called a co-ownership agreement, and you need to do that with your lawyer, and it sets out, you know, specifically what percentage, how the costs get split, you know, what happens, most importantly, what happens when someone wants out, like, are you forced to sell, or do you, you know, typically it'll be some kind of shotgun clause, or you'll get an appraisal, and then, you know, you'll take the average of 3 appraisals. So there's lots of different ways to do it, but it's just making sure, you know, it's like any business, right? Like, you got to go into it thinking that it's going to end at some point, and you know, do the paperwork. My friend likes to say, good paperwork makes good friends, right? So whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's an investor, just make sure you paper the deal properly, right? So we jumped ahead there a little, because that was a great question. And so one of the other questions we get just in terms of condo ownership, so maybe the person online might be interested in this too, is do you sell your condo first, or do you buy a house first? What do you do first, right? So the first part of that question is really, you know, is it a buyer's or seller's market for either of those things? So what that means is, like, are condos selling easily? Is it, you know, are there a lot of people waiting to buy condos? And are there a lot of people waiting to buy houses? And you need to know specifically, like, if you're selling a condo in Liberty Village and buying a house in, like, Little Italy, what's happening in each of those markets, and that'll help you determine, you know, what you should do first. You know, in the past, I want to say 6 months, you know, if you had a desirable condo and a house, they're both very strong sellers markets. So typically what people have been doing, because it's really hard to buy, is buying the property first, and then we can sell their condo quickly at a great price. The market's shifted a little bit in the last, you know, 3 to 4 weeks. So it really depends kind of what kind of condo you own, if you sell that first or you buy first. You know, typically it is still a strong seller's market, so people do buy first and then sell their condo. But, you know, for personal comfort, sometimes people like to sell first, right? And then the other part of that question is what happens when you close. So the close means you own the property and you get the keys. What happens when you close on your close on your sale before you close on your new house, right? So the good thing about that is you'll have the money to, you know, pay for the purchase, but you need a place to stay in between those dates in this case. And then conversely, if you know, close on the purchase first, you have the place to live, but you'll need what's called bridge financing to get you to where you actually have 2 mortgages out there. I guess technically you have 2 mortgages before you close on the sale, right? So, you know, neither of these things is really a big obstacle.
Maybe you could explain that. Like, when I first got into this, that was a big deal. Bridge financing.
Right.
But maybe you could just point out that it happens.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, what Jordan was saying was bridge financing is actually very common these days. You know, typically you do pay a bit of a higher interest rate, but, you know, you're going to pay hundreds of dollars over the period of a week or two. It's not, you know. So basically what it means is you're bridging the loan from your purchase to your sale, right? Because at a point in time, you'll have actually a mortgage on your new property and a mortgage on your old property. You have to bridge the total volume. That's why they call it a bridge loan, right? You guys jump in if I'm messing up the explanation.
Nothing that's wrong at this point.
All right.
So as long as the buyers or sellers, they're comfortable with this process, then I would highly encourage this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that they're not missing out on what they actually want.
Can you hear that? The comment was, you know, this is a very common practice, I guess. I'm summarizing what you said. But it's great for buyers and sellers, so you can actually get what you want, and you're not stressed about lining up the closing dates.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was just going to say as well, sometimes that may mean that you got property for, it may mean you got a property for $20,000, $10,000 less
Right.
because you know, the seller, for example, needed a closing date, you got a property for less, and people get all stressed out about, oh, I need it on that day.
Yeah.
Well, you might save 20,000 and pay 800 on a bridge loan, and you just made $19,000. But at the time, which can be very stressful, at the time you're not really thinking that way. But
Yeah.
we deal with this stuff all the time, and it can be very helpful, and you can actually help you get a house at a better price.
Or like conversely, when you're selling, you know, often people will say, "Oh, I have to like close like right the day before," or, you know, and we always say, "Hey, you know, it's probably not worth trying to line up the closing dates. It's probably worth getting the higher number for your property rather than trying to push the closing date." So, you know, that's all usually part of the negotiations in a sale process.
And I would say we also do that because we have the right mortgage people around us to do that. Often, let's face it, when you're dealing with your bank sometimes and they're not getting that kind of service and they're not getting the callbacks and the type of,
No offense if you guys work for a bank.
you know, but let's face it, right,
Thank you.
right. But let's face it, the banks don't get back to you as quickly as a number of, you know, if you're working with a mortgage broker, often. So anyways, it's just something.
Yeah, and you're saying the sellers will have the confidence
Exactly.
to go into that because they'll know the number, right?
Yeah, you want to know how much that's going to cost you.
Yeah. Great questions, team. Love it. And you know, like, what's a high-level process? So this is kind of just something I pulled together quickly. If you're going to buy a house, sell a condo, and do some renovations, right? So basically, you know, really before you start, you want to figure out what are your financials. You know, we'll help you evaluate what you could sell your condo for, and then, you know, and part of that is prepping your condo for sale. So we always like to, you know, declutter, paint, get the staging ready, all that kind of stuff. And then, you know, for the house purchase, because you're kind of working on two streams simultaneously, typically. I don't know why I'm holding this mic in my hand. There. They're working on two streams, right? You're working on finding a property to buy and selling your property, right? So on the selling your property side, you're prepping the property for sale. You're making it look nice. You're figuring out how much do we think we can get for this property. That helps you determine your financials so that you can help figure out what are your wants, what are the neighborhoods you love, what are the types of properties, what are all the potentials you want, what do you want to do to your house. Then we get out there, we show you properties, and, you know, after a while, we'll find one that you love, we'll put in offers. You know, typically, you know, I'd say we're somewhere between 1 and 3 offers takes to get a property, and usually you want to see 10 to 20 properties just to get yourself educated in the process. Then you get the house, right? Once you get this is if you're going to sell first, buy first, which is typically what most people do. Then we'll list your condo. Then we'll sell your condo. Usually they sell very quickly. We can sell things usually within 7 days, right? Jump in if I'm missing anything, Jordan. And then what I like to do personally, because I've done a lot of renovations, if you're going to do a renovation, and actually I'm doing a buyer's visit tomorrow with some clients, we're meeting a contractor, we're going through, here's our wish list, let's price it out. Because what I like to do is before you even close is plan out that reno, get some bids, know what you need to do from the permit perspective, so that when you do close on the property, when you do get the keys, the next day you can apply for permits and start construction, right? That just shrinks your timeline, right? So, you know, if you'll close on your sale, then you close on your permits, then you get your permits, then you start construction, then you complete your reno, hopefully in 3 to 6 months. And then you move in and you live in a new house, and then you go see your great mortgage professional and you refinance, so you take out the monies you put in renos back out of the property. And we should mention before you know, when you're planning out the reno and planning out your mortgage, you want to make sure that you either do the type of mortgage where they will put your rental costs on your mortgage, or you can refinance to recapture some of the equity that you built in the property. Make sense? Did I miss anything? We talked about co-ownership. So really, you know, like what we like to say is buying a home is an adventure And eventually, you know, it means it's going to be exciting. It's an exciting process, but it can also be a little bit scary, right? There's stress. There's, you know, you're looking for houses. You're trying to fall in love. Sometimes you don't, you know, get the property you want. So it can be a challenging process, right? And we like to think of ourselves as your guides on this adventure, right? We're not here to tell you what to do. We're here to help you, to help you navigate the process.
Well, also, what we mentioned is that we've invested ourselves.
Yeah.
We've got our own cash flow property. You have yours, I have mine.
I have 11.
Yeah. So, as you know, I used to have 22. So, we not only help others, but we live it. So, all of these issues.
We walk the talk.
We do. Yeah. We do.
We walk the talk, and we do it for people, and we make lots of videos about it. So, please check out our YouTube channel. And the other thing you mentioned is because we do all that stuff ourselves, you know, we have the right professionals. We know the mortgage people. We know the architects, the builders, all the things that you're going to need to do to get to buy a house, right? And, you know, I like to say, Jordan, that we make it fun.
We make it fun, and hopefully we take out the fear of it.
Yeah,
Because,
exactly.
You know, when you're going into something new, it's particularly if it's the first time and a reno
Yeah,
or being a landlord.
totally.
What was the first time before you were a landlord? It's scary.
Yeah,
scary.
you know what?
It's scary
That's
to unknown.
like let me share that. It's funny because I was talking to the people the house we're buying tomorrow, because you know they're really scared at this point. And we remember being there, buying our first property, buying our first investment property. I remember buying my first investment property, and truthfully, I brought in a partner not because I needed the cash flow, or I just like working with people, right? And I wanted someone else. He had more expertise. He already had a bunch of rentals, so I was like, hey, you want to partner up in this project? It'd be kind of cool. You know, and it was stressful, and you know, truthfully, you know, because my wife bought in too, and she was stressed in the process. Doesn't help.
I've had enough stress. I've had
Yeah.
enough sleepless nights. We're going to try to help you not have them. Yeah.
And it's funny because, you know, we're saying this because, you know, once we bought the property and then we get the mortgage, you know, we rented it out and the cash flow's coming in, and I was like, wait,
This works.
what? That's it? Like, it's not really stressful at all, right?
Yeah.
And I was talking to someone about it the other day, and you know, because they also have a whole bunch of property, and they're like, you know, I have millions of dollars in assets, but you know, my day-to-day life isn't really any different.
Right.
But it isn't until you sell or you refinance or that you sort of see a big influx of cash. But that's a conversation for another time.
It is. No, but I think your point is that when you're looking at a spreadsheet and you're looking at it and you're going, okay, Jordan, Paul, that looks good to me, but
Yeah.
when you actually do it and the checks come in, at the first of the month, I still look at my bank and I go, hey, yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Hey, this is
Yeah.
nice. This is nice.
Totally.
It's a good feeling.
And it's nice to work with people that have done it, because we have no doubt in our minds that this is doable or you can do it. And truthfully, that when my friend was trying to buy this house, he was so relieved that we were helping him, just because he didn't know what to do. He had no idea, and he's like, oh my God, thank you so much. And we'll do a video on that one as well. So Ben's laughing because we do videos and everything.
What would you say to the home buyer who is afraid of inflation and everything that comes along with that?
That is a great question. So the question was, what would you say to the home buyer that's afraid of inflation? Okay, so are you ready to have your mind blown a little bit?
Oh, first of all, Paul loves talking about this.
I love talking about this stuff.
So I'm going to sit down. And I'll be here. I'll grab a beer and I'll come back.
Okay, I'm going to try to explain it quickly. But so what happens in periods of high inflation is you actually want to own real assets, right? You don't want to own currency, and Darren's nodding his head because he's a very smart financial individual. You want to hold real assets, right? Because real assets will appreciate with inflation, right? And here's the kicker. Here's the thing that's really going to kill you, Kimberly. Your mortgage, the real value of the debt you hold to buy that asset, is actually shrinking each and every day because of that high inflation. So if you have high inflation and you own a house, the mortgage you owe on it is shrinking and the value of the house is growing. So you're making even more money. Huh? Come on. You should get excited about that.
You know what? That everything else I've heard before, but the way you positioned the fact that the mortgage was shrinking, that's the first time I've ever heard anyone put it like that.
Yeah. And it's,
Confidence growing.
yeah. And it's, and truthfully, that's a little bit hard to understand, you know, because the number's the same, but the real value is growing. And I use this example because I had a friend who, his family owned a bunch of property in Venezuela where they have had hyperinflation, right? So they ended up owning a whole bunch of property and the mortgages were worth nothing, right? Because the value of the currency shrunk so fast that within a period of 5 years, they owed basically nothing on these properties. So, I mean, hopefully we're not in that situation in Canada, but just to sort of wrap your mind around the value of this mortgage shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, and the value of their property growing and growing and growing.
Because inflation is growing.
Yeah, because of inflation, right?